Welcome to Megapath Presents. I'm Ronnie Hayes, and today let's talk The Walking Dead Season 7, Episode 3, Afterthoughts. Now, I am going to apologize right off the bat. This is going to be an old-style Afterthoughts video where it's just a discussion between me and you. I'm going to be able to use some images, maybe a clip or two to get my points across, but I've tried doing this specific video a couple different ways, but I found myself leaning towards more of the discussion side, pulling a lot of fan feedback because there was a lot of discussion on parts of this episode, whether fans liked it, didn't like it, were confused, and then there's fans that just downright loved it, you know? And I pretty much understand most of the opinions I'm hearing about this episode. With that said, let's jump right into this, and I think the intro is important. I thought I would actually like the intro more by rewatching it and let it simmer a little bit, and I don't. There's just no way I'm gonna like this intro. I don't like the song, I don't like how it was all chopped up, and I don't like how it was left so damn confusing. We'll get to that in a second. First thing I want to mention, the girl Laura. This is officially credited as Laura, so comic book fans, if you're excited, I don't know if she's going to be the Laura from the comic book. We do know that they like to switch things around. I mean, look at Francine and Holly, just for an example. So don't get your hopes up, but keep an eye on her. Now, when it comes to Dwight, the intro was showing him how he gets every single piece of the sandwich, and that is a very cool concept, but I just was left more confused than I was understanding what was happening. For example, does he pay any type of points? I mean, can he take whatever he wants at any given time? It looks like Negan has a lot of men, and if all his men can just take everything they want, what's to say they're not eating everyone at a house and home? Right off the bat, I'm going to get this out of the way. When I watch a show, I'm not looking specifically for things that don't make sense. I'm watching it, I see Dwight just take food. My instant thought is, why? Why is he allowed to take food? If he's allowed to take food, who else can just take food? If they're all taking food, I know some really skinny people that can eat a whole mountain of food multiple times a day. If they're doing that, there's no limit. What if they're eating more than the other people can produce and find and steal? It seems like an ass-backwards way to run things, and it seems very problematic. That thought pops in my head as soon as I'm watching it. So these videos are more for critical thinking, and they're not really for the fans who just want to love every single thing. And if you do, there's nothing wrong with that. There's some episodes that are heavily flawed that other fans talk about that I might have blinders on, and I just love it so damn much I can't see the flaws. You know what I mean? So I feel you there. Anyway, let's move ahead. He's building his sandwich, and I do like the idea here how we're seeing the repetition of his everyday life at the sanctuary. I just thought it was left a little more confusing, like the guy taking off his shirt. What the hell was he doing there? The shirt isn't worth anything. Why would he even throw it on the table? It clearly looks like that was an area that is like a storefront inside the sanctuary. At one point, it happens so quickly, but he starts stealing food, or at least taking food. I don't know if he's taken his own food that he was trying to trade. I don't know if he just thought it was a good idea to take whatever he wanted. It doesn't make sense that this guy would put his life on the line stealing food in front of everybody right then and there. And we know he put his life on the line because we saw him getting put on the Walker fence later on. Now, Dwight writes down a number 39, which appears to be the guy's address inside the factory. And here's the thing. If that is the case, is Dwight trading for his stuff? Is he just stealing the stuff? Is he raiding it from his family? We see his family sitting there. If that's the case, what's to stop them from robbing them at any given point in time? I don't get it. You know what I mean? If you have any thoughts or opinions, and I'm asking this for you guys to shed light on it, if you see it a different way and you might be able to help me understand it so I'll like it a little more, that's a big part of what these discussions are about. It's not just about saying, I didn't understand it, it's stupid. A lot of it has to do with, I didn't understand it, I'm hoping they can clarify it, or someone else's opinions or perspective can clarify it so I will like it as much as you. Anyway, let's move on to the perimeter. I love this. A lot of fans are actually asking, what the hell is this perimeter gonna do? You take Jesus. He is slick and he's clever. He can definitely get around that perimeter, killing a couple walkers and sneak into the sanctuary. I do not believe the perimeter is actually there to stop one person from sneaking in. I actually think it's only there to slow down a mob. Let's say the library community gathered 30, 40, 50 people and they wanted to attack the sanctuary's headquarters. I think the wall is just there to slow them down just enough for the people inside to mount a counterattack. that is all. Plus, I think it's so awesome that this episode was titled The Cell, and clearly it related to the cell that Daryl was in, but it also related to the figurative cell that Dwight was in. Well, it's pretty literal as well, but you see Dwight all throughout this episode is constantly reminded, he's constantly shown out there on the wall. He's eating his sandwich out there, and the wall is his cell. He sees the walker kneeling and standing. Daily routine that Dwight does. In this episode, we see Dwight kneeling and standing. Then he brings Daryl out and he shows them, you can be like them, you could be like me. He also sees them bring the guy that was beaten to death. He also sees his friend Gordon later on. It's a constant reminder from beginning to end that Daryl is not the only one in a cell, and I loved it. I think that is so freaking cool. In case you missed it, the dog food was called A-OK dog food. I looked it up. Apparently they made it just for the show, which is not uncommon, so I don't think there's really much to read into there, but I thought that was just neat, a little bonus. And the music they were using to torture Daryl, I thought it was absolutely awesome. It's not music I would personally listen to, but I think the whole idea and how it conflicts with Daryl's emotions. This is an upbeat, happy song, and then you have Daryl who's at rock bottom. And keep in mind, it is Dwight's job to break Daryl down, and I think they did a very good job showcasing that. In the beginning of the episode, he was pitching it to Daryl. If you go back and rewatch it, it's pretty clever. Dwight's trying to finish the job. He's like, dude, just make it easy on yourself and kneel. Plain and simple. And coming up in the exam room, I don't think Negan's trying to get Sherry pregnant. I don't think this was a test for Dwight. I think it was just a simple accident. And Carson says something to Doctor, who's actually brothers with the other Carson at the hilltop. That isn't just a mistake. But he says something about him being his own assistant is something he needs to get used to, hinting that this might be new because the apocalypse isn't really that old when you think about it. Or he could have had an assistant at the hilltop, which was the community he was at before he was taken. And yes, Dwight, in my opinion, saying better luck next time was just being sarcastic, and I think it was putting on a front more so for Carson, because in this area, in this community, they don't trust each other. Anyone could be a snitch or a spy for Negan. And I think it's important to notice that Sherry is nice immediately to Daryl, and she's offering him advice. And then later we see Joey with Rick's gun. This is a gun I'm hoping Negan will just knock it off with his bullshit and give Rick his gun back in some sort of sign that they have earned it and they are falling in line. We move over to an awesome discussion between Negan and Dwight that I love, and this is talking about breaking Daryl down. Negan, in my opinion, tests Dwight with a blast from the past, but also pushing his buttons kinda sorta, which is interesting because they make these two characters a lot more friendly than they do in the comic. Negan offers Dwight any woman he wants as long as she says yes, and he does tease him about Eugene biting his dick, but with the woman and any woman that says yes, I think a lot of fans immediately started calling Negan a rapist, using this as an example, and I think they forget that it's actually possible that there's a group of women at the sanctuary who are whores. They will whore themselves out for points. I'm gonna wait and see if we get a clarification later on that these women are just regular women floating about, because you think about it, if they just say yes, then does that mean no one can hook up and have sex? Because if they say yes and they want to have sex with Dwight, why do they need Negan to say it's okay or set it up? What is that? You know what I mean? If Negan says this is the buffet bar of women, why do you need that okay unless these are the working girls and Negan is letting him have a turn on the house? You know what I mean? And the final thing here that is very important, they mention the orange situation. Now I think the girl's name is Arat. I don't know if I heard that clearly, but it might be something different. Now the orange situation is somebody stealing something. Negan says specifically, I want my shit back, but this is grunt work. Later on we'll hear them talk about an orange situation where Dwight steals the medicine. So this is not about a savior who just wants to leave. I see a lot of comments where fans are saying you are prisoners at the sanctuary. We don't know that yet. That might be true, but this is someone who stole. Negan even says it's a grab and go. And even more interesting, the girl says there's only 3 ways he can go: the moth, the angel and the hard way. And I think that's really interesting because if you have the Hilltop Kingdom and Alexandria, if Alexandria is the hard way, maybe the kingdom is the angel and the Hilltop is the moth. You get what I'm saying? Because obviously it's easier to make the connection that the people at Alexandria needed to learn the hard way, and the kingdom, from what it looks like, they had a sweet arrangement. They're not even going to the kingdom to take their shit. Negan stays away. He meets Ezekiel in an area, in a parking lot. So maybe the angel could be a code for the road to the kingdom. I don't know. I just want to point that out. If you guys make any connections, let me know, because I think that's really interesting that we have 3 main communities we know of other than the sanctuary, and they're talking about only 3 ways he can go. And then we get to a part in the story where I think it shows Daryl is very stupid when he's impulsive. He was impulsive to punch Negan. It got Glenn killed. He's impulsive to escape, and if he escapes, where the hell is he going to go? He could, for whatever reason, crash and die out on the road, and Negan could get pissed, go to Alexandria thinking that Daryl escaped, and really he died in a gutter somewhere and kill people at Alexandria. Daryl could make it to Alexandria, Negan could get pissed and go looking for him with his army and kill everyone at Alexandria. So I don't know what Daryl was thinking. And a lot of fans online are asking me what I would have liked to see, and I would have liked to see Daryl escape if he's going to try get away, and I would like to see him make it to Alexandria and then make that painful decision to have Rick turn him in. I think that would have been absolutely fantastic to show that Rick is willing to work with Negan and turn Daryl in. If they were able to switch the storyline around after now watching episode 4, I think that's such a painful visual, having Daryl able to escape, Rick talk to him, say, no, we need to return you, we need to do this the right way, and then in episode 4 when Negan comes with Daryl and Rick sees him all beat up and just visually broken, that could be absolutely 10 times more heartbreaking to Rick because it was his idea. Something little, we don't need that, it was just an idea, moving on. And even though we don't get that, we still get an awesome face-off with Negan and Daryl. I loved this face-off. I absolutely loved it. I think the charisma with Jeffrey Dean Morgan was at 100% the entire time. And I do like what happens here. You get what appears to be a Daryl who is very defiant, right? He doesn't even flinch when Negan goes to hit him with the bat. Later on, after Dwight shows him the picture of Glenn's head bashed in, after he clearly vomited after that because they show him on the ground in the same position Glenn was in, he gets brought to the room. Negan's trying to get him to say, I'm Negan, and he keeps pointing the bat at him, and Daryl is like moving away from the bat. Now, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever that Daryl's now suddenly afraid of the bat. I felt like Daryl was disgusted. Like, if that bat actually gets close to him, he can't contain himself. He's just going to either vomit, shit himself, or burst out in tears. I felt like he was so repulsed at the bat that if you go back and watch it, he's like moving around like he's terrified of the bat. I just don't think it fits, because nothing happened at that point in time other than him getting an ass kicking for escaping. It has nothing to do with the bat. You know what I mean? I love watching that scene, thinking that after, again, seeing the aftermath of Glenn's head, he is now so repulsed by the bat, he doesn't want it anywhere near him. Oh, I love that so much. So heartbreaking, especially since he blames himself so much, because it's his fault. And now we get a scene that 98% of the fan base was totally confused. We're going to breeze over this. I'm hoping we're going to see what happened to his bike, but somewhere along the lines, his bike got mysteriously damaged, where it didn't have any blood and guts. It was clean, but it was all destroyed. He runs into Gordon, and you need to go back and listen to every word they say back and forth. Gordon is thinking rational. He's like, we outnumber him. Why are we letting him rule our lives like this? He pleads with Dwight to kill him. He talks about how they used to be friendly with each other. Dwight is saying, look around, everything is his or will be. That gives you a clear idea of what Dwight is thinking. There's nowhere you can run to where Negan's not going to eventually expand and take it over. Dwight is also putting on a front, I feel. He is being someone who he thinks he should be, and he's covering up the person he really is. And I think this interaction between him and Gordon starts cracking the person that he thinks he should be, and the person who he is is shining through. Kind of like Carol, a couple of these characters put on the front of the person who they think they should be, and it conflicts with who they actually are. And I think this is a mercy kill that he does to his friend, because he shoots him in the back, which he has to, and I know a lot of fans say a mercy kill is shooting them in the head. He's not saving him from a life forever as a walker. He's just simply killing him. He's giving him the mercy he asked for, and he did ask for it. He shoots him in the back. Most likely Dwight walks back after he turns, so that way the walker can follow him back. And later on it looks like he's surprised, but I don't think he's surprised. I think what Gordon was saying kind of hit Dwight in that moment, and he keeps burying it down, but it keeps kind of coming up to the surface. And we move over to the conversation with Sherry and Dwight, and I'm going to say this as a matter of fact. Bottle episodes hurt storylines like this. We are supposed to feel like Sherry and Dwight barely seen each other since she became Negan's wife. How do we know this? Because in the stairwell, Dwight asks her, "Is he good to you?" This is something new. They don't run into each other all the time. But because they cram everything around their storyline in this one episode, Sherry is everywhere except for with Negan. She runs into Dwight and Daryl in the doctor's office. She runs into Daryl when he tries to escape. She comes back to Daryl's cell after he gets caught. She runs into Dwight in the stairwell. Go back to the doctor's office. Look at Sherry and Dwight when they first see each other. These are not people who see each other all the time, but because it's a bottle episode, it's as if they're chilling every single day. And then she slinks back to Negan once in a while. And don't tell me it doesn't. It fucking does. But go back and listen to their conversation. He's asking her for the first time, "Is he good to you?" And she says yes. And afterwards, this is where Dwight does something really grimy, and this connects with his altercation with Gordon previously. Dwight is confident this will break Daryl. Little does he know, he would have had better luck not putting the Polaroid of Glenn on the wall. Dwight even changes the music, and he waits. He waits and he listens to see if Daryl's gonna crack and cry. Daryl does. Dwight is pretty sure this is it. He has broken him down, and then he brings him in with Negan. We get some backstory on Dwight and Sherry and Tina's situation with the Code Orange, where he stole all the medicine. Tina became Negan's wife. Dwight's backstory here actually opens up some very interesting debate in the fandom. I see a lot of fans who are saying, oh, comic Negan's not a rapist, but this shows that TV Negan is a rapist because, and I've seen the conversation get so warped that it's not even the same. The initial conversation says that Negan basically gives Sherry an option: marry him or your husband dies. That's not exactly how it is. Now, I'm not saying this to defend it or to say Negan's not a rapist or he's taking advantage of the situation. I'm simply clarifying the facts. Negan has not walked up to any woman that we've seen so far and said, "I'm going to kill you if you do not marry me." He has not done that. Tina's situation was simple. He saw a woman who could not afford medicine she needed, so he simply went up, and that's what Negan means by "I'm a stand-up guy." He went up to her and he said, "You know what? If you're my wife, you want for nothing, you'll get it all, and then you don't have to deal with the points. You don't have to deal with getting the medicine. We will always make sure we find you medicine, yada, yada, yada." That's what he means by being a stand-up guy. He doesn't have an organization that's set up with welfare. If he starts giving this one individual welfare, and I know it's a cold and friggin' screwed up way to think, but just think about how the sanctuary right now is probably volatile at any moment. We see people beaten to death over some canned food. Imagine if he starts giving welfare out to this one girl. The people are going to revolt. His hands are tied. In his mind, in a messed up way, the only thing Negan could do is restructure the entire order. But right now, he's so far in a hole, the only thing he can do, if you come up with a better idea, I'm all ears. But the only thing he could do, again, in this position, and with his mentality, is to offer to marry her so that way he can provide her medicine and she doesn't need to go down on points or get in the hole or whatever. That's what he means by stand-up guy. Now, when Dwight and Sherry come back and ask for forgiveness, Dwight is begging Negan, do not kill Sherry. Negan thinks it's cute, so he says, I'll just kill Dwight instead. The floor was open for negotiation. Dwight pleaded not to kill Sherry, so Negan didn't. Dwight didn't say, hey, I'll blow you. Dwight didn't say, hey, I'll marry you. It was open for negotiation. So when it came time for Sherry's turn, she immediately, the first thing she thought of, the first thing they said, she offered to marry him, which wasn't enough. It wasn't like, oh, you marry me, okay, Dwight lives. That's not the case. Okay, that's a start. But Dwight broke a rule. He needs to be punished, and that's how we got the iron. So as we're debating, it's important to get the facts specific. So as we're debating, which I love, I definitely want to hear your thoughts and opinions on this. How do you feel about it? I am simply right now stating the facts as we see it in the episode and trying to clarify some of the perspective that you might have if you look at this coming from as if the sanctuary is a place that's running. You know what I mean? You can't just simply give Tina medicine. You can't. The entire place would implode. It would go downhill so fast, Rick would take over. With that being said, I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on how you feel about Negan, and we'll definitely continue that story in a follow-up video. We know Daryl does not say, I'm Negan. Now, this is something that, again, I think it's stupid. I think Negan clearly is trying to get him to say it. It's noticeable as hell, and Daryl holds into some of his pride. Daryl's doing this for himself. This is a complete and utter selfish thing he's doing, and I know they're writing it to make it seem like Daryl is doing this for Glenn, which is what Daryl says. Daryl tells Dwight, you know, you said I'm Negan for Sherry. You came back for Sherry. I get it. You were doing this for somebody. He says, I can't do that for somebody. And I feel like he's talking about both Glenn and Maggie. You know, he could never face Maggie again. The way I see it, Daryl saying, I'm Negan, falling in line, doing what he wants, right then and there to put him in a better position, but knowing that he's doing this in the end to get into position to be able to take out Negan. That is not the same as if Daryl said, I'm Negan, he fell in line, and that was it. He was one of Negan's goons. If Daryl did that, right, that would be disrespectful. That would be shitty to Glenn, and that would be shitty to Maggie. But if Daryl said, I'm Negan, just to put himself in a position to be able to take out Negan, I don't see that as disrespectful at all. I see that as something that Daryl did as a selfish character, and I mean that as a positive thing, though, because I think that is realistic. We are very selfish in life. Human beings, almost every single thing we do is selfish. We do things because it makes us feel good. Everything, even being nice to people. A lot of people that are extra nice, it makes them feel good. That's a selfish act. I mean, it's messed up, but that's the truth in life. Daryl does not say, I'm Negan, for selfish reasons, because it's his pride. You know what I mean? Because it makes him feel like shit. It makes him feel like a traitor. It makes him feel like he's disrespecting his dead friend. It makes him feel like he's disrespecting Maggie. When in reality, it's probably the smartest and best bet to just say, I'm Negan, and put himself in a better situation. Put on that front, smile in the face of the boogeyman so you can stab him in the back. So my final thoughts for this episode, I am loving what's going on with Dwight. I think Dwight is an interesting character where I want to spit in his face at one moment, and the next moment I think there's some redemption kind of cracking through, but I'm left so uncertain because it's so damn subtle, and it's so very, very damn interesting. Jeffrey Dean Morgan is doing a stellar job with Negan. Every scene he's in seems to be better than the last, and I am looking forward to seeing a lot more Negan coming up this season and next season. And Daryl, even though I break his balls, I really enjoy what Norman Reedus has been doing with Daryl Dixon. There was a little slippage there where I felt like there was a disconnect between the Daryl we got originally and Daryl we got now. With that being said, I am looking forward to seeing what story is coming up out of this between Daryl and Dwight. This is something we've been discussing on this channel, and I personally have been looking forward to ever since last season, so I cannot wait to see when we revisit the Sanctuary. Overall, I felt like there's more cons than pros in a bottle episode. There was a scene that actually felt like it was cut out, and there was stuff that was left just unexplained. I will not hold it against this episode for that, though, because I feel like we're going to revisit the Sanctuary and they will clarify some things. So with that said, if they don't clarify it in a future video, yeah, this was a fail for an introduction with the Sanctuary. However, if they do clarify it and make like a part B type of introduction with the Sanctuary, I think this episode did just fine. With that being said, I do want to clarify that I'm calling it the Sanctuary, and I see a lot of fans asking why. That's because because it's the name in the comic book. I'm sure we will get that sometime this season down the line, maybe in a reference or something, but if we don't, that's why we call it the Sanctuary, because that's the name in the comic. I know, screw us comic fans. If you made it to the end of this episode, please, if you did enjoy it, hit that like button, show us some love, and don't forget to leave your thoughts and opinions about this episode down in that comment box. I'm done talking, it's your turn.
Subscribe now.